Tabor. We're going to be talking through Monday's MLB slate. A lot of fun stuff happened over the weekend. I actually left town for a day for the first time in a while. Had a nice time, but was watching the Masters and really happy for Rahm. Not very happy for some of my lineups. Didn't quite do as well. I actually had a chance. I had a nice. I had the Rahm, Koepka, Henley, Fitzpatrick, and I believe my other 6 of 6 in that one was somebody. Oh, it was Sanjay. But it was pretty good. You had some low ownership on Henley and Fitzpatrick, and I ended up I think in the 60s in FanDuel's big tournament. But it's out of 1 million people, so I had some shots, but didn't quite get there. Sheets, how did you do? I'm guessing it wasn't great because I know you didn't have the expensive guys. But let's jump into the baseball after you're done.
I had 1 out of 150 lineups with Koepka and 0 out of 150 lineups with Rahm. So moving on to baseball.
Hey, it was still a nice event, and you gotta like Rahm. I feel good for him. Just everybody, the narrative about him not being able to do it there, and also him being the lowest owned of the expensive guys. I just felt like that. Oh, he doesn't suit this course and all this stuff. Everybody's writing me, even though he's so lucky, he shouldn't even be here. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think there are two great golfers in the world. Everybody else is a distant third and whatever. Anyway, that's my take. Let's move into baseball. We'll go game by game here. It's a fun slate. I like it so far. I like that there's good options. I think there's starting to get a little better hitting weather just already. I mean, it's already a little better. Like you'll see, in Chicago, rather than 40 degrees and winds blowing in, you've got a little wind out and 60 degrees. Just some spots I want to attack today. So
yeah, I think there are several options, both hitting wise and pitching wise, and to differentiate between the chalky, obvious plays and the leverage plays, I think is really important. So it's a handy slate, like 8 games, and I'm looking forward to dealing with it. We're gonna have I'm just not going to be able to deal with these turbo slates and these 2 games, these 640s. I'm just going to really just presume they don't exist.
Yeah, and just for what it's worth, every time I'm ever able to play them or do play them or we don't have enough, I will throw out my lineups into the premium Discord just so you guys can have an idea of what I'm doing. So
I'll tell you that's really the whole. I'll remind me to talk to you about something offline after. But
yeah,
that's really the whole key to this is people were asking me, hey, Sheet, you're playing DFS. What are you doing? And I just want to show people kind of what I'm doing, my process. And honestly, sometimes if I'm not going to play a slate or whatever, I don't even feel like I don't even want to put sheets up or whatever. But if I have time, I just do it anyway. And certainly, like if I'm going to go and play like a turbo slate, I'll put up what I'm doing. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. No, good stuff. All right, so let's start off with San Diego and the Mets. One of the better pitching matchups of the day. It's weird. We've got a lot of really good games at like 640, but I actually didn't even double check the fan. I registered my lineups, just double checking if FanDuel starts at 640 or at 7. Start to 7. So it's kind of a good slate if you do want to play another one. That little 640, there's a bunch of games in there, just to throw that out there. The Padres and Mets, look, I don't care that the 6th inning of the last 2 games he's pitched, Scherzer has just been terrible. He was really good up to that point in the first game. Strikeouts were lower in the second game, but he was cruising along still, and he just got hit around in that 6th inning. He still has an incredible leash. He just keeps getting hit in the 6th. The home runs are up. It worries me a little bit that he's already walked 4 guys. He's a guy who usually has been pretty good about his control. But I think this feels like, even in a tough matchup, like a really good spot to play him. The problem is he's going to have some ownership. So you can decide how much variance you want to how much you want to embrace, the range of outcomes with him. I also think you could argue for Yu Darvish on the other side in a probably just as tough of a matchup, I guess you'd say, or a very, very similarly tough matchup. They're both in play for me. There's not a lot of obvious pitching and obvious spots. I think both of these guys are good options, but it is nerve-wracking when you look at the lineups across the way. They're really tough. So it's just a matter of how much risk do you want to take on for this kind of price for these pitchers. I have Scherzer as the top pitcher on the slate, but I'm very, very open to not using him just because the matchup's tough. And I'm not going to be afraid though because he had two subpar Scherzer starts.
Yeah, for me, I have one kind of top tier of pitchers, and I always account for value. You know what I mean? I'm not just talking about the top projected guys. Then I have 4 guys that are kind of next tier, and 2 of those are going to be really high owned, and 2 are not. And then I have a really kind of secondary tier. Like Darvish, I have in the secondary tier. I don't think I'm going to get to him. I do have Scherzer in kind of like that third group. I like him. He's not the greatest value in the world, probably because of the Padres. And it's not he's going to be really high owned or really low owned. I think he's going to be owned, you know. So I don't to pair him. I would probably play him with. I don't know if I'd play him with like a chalky hitting stack. Like I would probably play him with one of the lower owned hitting stacks. And I have a couple of different ways you can go hitting wise. So I definitely think he's in play, but I would not play him with say Coors or anything like that.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I would say if you're playing 150 today, let's just say as a thing, or even 20. If I was playing 20 lineups, I think that's where I can get to one Mets stack against Darvish.
Okay.
He walks. His control is always an issue, and you have the Mets, who are one of the teams that walk the most in the MLB from last year. There's a little bit of turnover on their lineup, but they also have some power, and you got some wind blowing out. Not great hitting weather, 55 degrees, but 12-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to left. I do think the Mets are sort of like that fringy, the stack no one will play that you could maybe get away with if you get one of the bad Darvish games. All right, Cincinnati, Atlanta. So this is part of this is even part of my hesitancy before with Atlanta. I'm not sure. Well, Ashcraft looked really good in the first outing. I don't think this is a spot for him. I think Atlanta obviously is going to look like a decent stack. And Bryce Elder looked great in his first outing, but I don't know how duplicatable that is. You do have 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing in from left, which is going to keep me off of some of this maybe full stacks as much as I would go. But of course, Atlanta looks like a very good stack as always. They're at home. Again, I would try to lean a little bit more lefties if I played them. And the weird part is, though, with no one playing them, even with the weather bad, I feel like maybe I will take a shot because it is kind of weird to see an unowned Atlanta team. And while Ashcraft looked good, like there's a bad bullpen behind him. And I don't know, like, what does that mean? One start, he looked good. You got cheap Atlanta. You got Rosario at 2,200, Ozuna at 2,800 to mix in with the studs of Olsen, Riley, Albies, and Acuna. Like, I just feel like it's a stack that I always want to be overweight on, and it doesn't seem like people are going to play them today. It's not great hitting conditions, especially for Atlanta, but it's still worth it enough to me. I mean, these guys just feel like they put up 7 runs. They put up 7 runs every day, and with that becomes a chance for double digits. So I do like Atlanta, and I think that they're getting way overlooked at early ownership.
One thing, by the way, we haven't done really all season, maybe we got to start doing more of this. It's usually not my thing, is identifying like actual players, like in one-offs and stuff like that. We haven't really had a chance to do that.
I've done it every slate.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, first, as far as the pitching goes, I have Elder as a strong play today at 6,600. I have him as one of the top 2, and I think he's gonna be pretty highly owned actually. Mm-hmm. So I have him as a strong play. So likewise, I wouldn't play him with some of the higher owned stacks. As far as Atlanta goes, I have them as one of the stronger kind of leverage stacks on the board. I have 4 teams that I like that are kind of like lower owned stacks, and I think Atlanta is one of them. So I think that's probably a pretty good way to start. You get a little bit of correlation with the pitchers and the hitters as well, So I think you could play Elder if you like him, right alongside of the Atlanta people. Listen, remember when Acuna gets on base, he's like going to be on third, and like you know what I mean. Like it's always good to have some Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I do like that. I like Atlanta. I like Elder, and that's it.
Yeah, it's Acuna already, stealing basically a base every game. Yeah, and like that's what's a great thing about the Brave stack. Not maybe as true today, but some other days, but just Acuna and Albies with the speed upside, and then you just have the ridiculous power of Riley and Olsen, and then you always have a great catching option in Murphy or Darno, and they're both good hitters. So then you've got the cheapos at the bottom. It just is a stack that I can always talk myself into at low ownership.
Just for fun, let me just put this in here. Who would be the 5th best Atlanta guy? Riley, I guess Riley maybe, right?
I think he'd be better than 5th, but I think
I was wondering who I'm forgetting. Right? Okay.
Oh, Murphy. Well, the problem is that if I stack them, you might want to use the value of Rosario or Ozuna just because they're so cheap.
But if I'm going to use Elder, I don't need the value as much.
That's true. That's true. But then Sean Murphy, I just would go 1 through 5.
That's what I have. I just do the shell thing here: Murphy, Olsen, Albies, Riley, and Acuna. Then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yep. And then, all right, so let's move on to Seattle, Chicago, which we need Seattle to win, obviously.
For Survivor, you were saying.
For Survivor, yeah. But it also goes along with one of look. We know Smiley is one of the range of outcomes guys. Okay, you get a little bit of wind in Chicago, nearly 5 run total for the Mariners, who have a lot of guys who I really like against lefties, starting with Julio Rodriguez, Eugenio Suarez, even AJ Pollock down in the 6 hole. Sam Haggerty, if he starts, I don't mind using him for value at second base at 2,300. I just like the stack quite a bit today, and occasionally Smiley's really good, but he tends to get his pitch count up. He tends to get in trouble, and they have no bullpen. So I'm totally good with Seattle as a stack. My first build, they were the first stack I put in. And I think it sets up quite nicely for them. So I'm in on Seattle.
Well, what about
I didn't mention the pitching.
Yeah, what about Castillo?
Yeah, so if you really just long term, I like Castillo, but unless you're getting a huge ownership discount, playing he and Scherzer in similar prices and him at the same ownership, it just feels like a little bit wrong. But I mean, it is a really good matchup, obviously. It is a high total. I mean, they've got a 4.1 total for the Cubs. So yes, Castillo has definitely got the ability to be the best pitcher on the slate, possibly. Because of his ownership, I'll probably be below the field on him. But I do think that it's definitely worth noting. And by the way, I'm not saying I don't want to stack the Cubs, but Cody Bellinger's 2,900, Trey Mancini's 3,100. Those guys are really reasonable one-offs to me. So I don't even mind if you want to get to a little bit of these Cubs. But for me, it's Bellinger batting cleanup at 2,900 did stand out a little bit. So yeah, both pitchers. I think you can make a case for both of them. I think that the Castillo is going to be popular, and I'm probably going to be a little bit underweight on Castillo unless I find something that I haven't found yet.
Yeah, so I have Castillo to me in a similar tier as Scherzer. Definitely high upside, and definitely going to get some ownership. Mm-hmm. So again, play him at your own risk. You play him. Don't play him with Coors. Don't you know what I mean? On the Seattle side, I have Seattle as one of the 4 lower owned stacks, just like you do. So I like that quite a bit. So I don't like the wind particularly blowing in, I guess, but
no, it's blowing out.
It's blowing out.
Only 6 miles an hour, but it's a little bit out.
So I like Suarez and Rodriguez. I wish they had the other catcher. I love Raleigh. And Pollock as well. Teoscar. So those are, I guess, my top 4, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm in with you. I like Seattle. Just alongside of Atlanta, actually, is my top 2 of my. I guess my Seattle and Atlanta are actually my two favorite lower owned stacks. I have 2 other kind of value bits of nonsense later, but so what does it look like? So Rodriguez, Hernandez, Pollock. Not going to get Raleigh in.
Oh no, Raleigh, yeah. Raleigh, and then you
Raleigh
second if you want to save there. There's a lot of things you can do.
Yeah. Okay. This is a good start. Also. Okay.
It would be nice if we had the Hanegers and some of the other guys from Seattle, but we got what we got. All right, then we get over as you should start this one off because you say it every time. Hasn't worked so far this year for everybody, and they've been doing it. They're probably going to do it again today a little bit. What are your thoughts on the pitching, and then how many people are going to stack Texas?
Right. So I don't think I'm going to be stacking Texas. I have Texas as kind of like a real I think they're going to get ownership because, like you said, everybody attacks Greinke, and I just don't need to have high-owned guys against Greinke. I don't know. Now, again, there's going to be other teams you could play, right? With all the Angels and the Cardinals and the Colorados, maybe Texas goes a little bit lower owned than normal. But, yeah, I guess I have them. Again, it depends on ownership. I crossed them off only because I thought they'd be really popular. But if they do, if they do kind of fall under the radar, certainly they have to be a good play.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, I have Kansas City, as almost always, as a pretty reasonable value stack. And yet, I definitely have interest in Heaney. Okay.
Right.
Not primarily, but it helps that he got blown up in his first start. It's like if he mowed everybody down, then
He'd be a nice on pitcher on the slate.
Then he'd be popular. So I definitely like the Heaney side as again I have three kind of leveragey pitchers. One of them is Heaney. So I definitely think there's going to be business to be done in this game. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but Haney again. You play Haney, then you could play Haney with Coors, like for example, if you want
to. I like the Heaney idea as a thing. I didn't get to any KC stacks, but I'm not going to fault you for it. You've got some cheap options in Olivares and Reyes and all that, and you can play them as a small stack.
Not to mention the righties. I mean, not to mention like Witt and Perez, who are not values, but they're kind of could be the nuts in this matchup if it goes well. It's like
100%. It just depends on which Andrew Heaney shows up, and if you get the other one, you might be in a great spot. This is the kind of team that I feel like he could have success against. They chase a lot early in counts, which will help him because he tends to get himself in trouble by getting too many, 3-0, 3-1 counts and things like that. At least they have historically. So I'm into taking some shots on Heaney, and I really like Texas actually, given the ownership. I don't think you necessarily need to full stack against Greinke because that doesn't work, and it does sometimes, but it doesn't plenty of the time. But I love Seager. I don't care about a little bit of a no home run start in the first week. He'll hit one very soon, and my guess is it'll be today. And I think like Nate Lowe is a reasonable price at first base. I like them more as a mini stack than a full stack, but I don't mind if you want to make them a full stack either. I do think that playing these teams instead of the guys we're about to talk about is definitely a way you can get different on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm filling this out here. I mean, you can just stack both the sides of this if you want, but yeah, you have to choose between Witt and Seager. Seager obviously is better hitter, but Witt's got more of the stolen base upside. But yeah, all these Jung is freaking 3,400. I like Dozier, by the way, for Kansas City. That'd be another good righty to play in this spot. So Perez, Dozier, or Witt on Kansas City, and Reyes for sure. And then Jung, Seager, Garcia. Yeah, I mean, you could hope this game goes off actually if you want.
Yeah. Only thing I would mention is that these KC guys just don't hit the ball at all. Like Hunter Dozier, I think he hitting 100 this year with no extra base hits. Just want to throw that out there because it does look like tempting, but then you look at Fernando Reyes hitting 100, Hunter Dozier hitting 100, and I'm not saying they're going to all year, but these guys legitimately may be 200 flat hitters. So that's why it's hard for me to get on board with a full stack with them. All right, St. Louis, Colorado, obviously going to be the most chalky game of the night. I don't think there's a reason to get creative enough to try to use the pitchers here. There's times where it comes through the season and then the pricing and everything, but Marquis is 8,500, which is ridiculous. I'm not going to use Matt's here. Look, there are worse plays that have been made, but I don't think there's any real reason to do it. It's 74 degrees in Colorado. It is like, it seems like we should be, you should even be getting pieces of this, but I'm totally fine skipping this game to some extent. The only thing is, I don't think Colorado is going to end up owned. So take that for what it's worth. Like, they've hit lefties better than righties. Matz can be good, but the ball's not going to move much for him in Colorado. I could see talking myself into the Rocky side just because I don't think they're getting the ownership. Whereas as we always see, the St. Louis coming in is going to be the higher owned team. And they're very affordable. And I also have more respect for Marquis than most pitchers, than most guys. He does just well enough in Colorado to where at these kind of ownerships on a slate where I like enough other stacks, I probably avoid from a stack perspective, but I certainly don't mind. Like if you wanted to play, Tyler O'Neill, if you want to get lower ownership, Jordan Walker has got an immense amount of power. He's going to be really good. Jordan Walker at the bottom of the lineup is going to be low owned. Nolan Gorman is going to be low owned near the bottom of the lineup. Tommy Edman will be low owned. That's the way you stack, with those guys instead. But you've got like Burleson at 2,900 batting second, playing with first base and outfield eligibility. They're just going to be too high owned. So I don't know that I take the full entire fate of the game, but I know that none of my full stacks will be St. Louis. And I don't even think they will be Colorado, but if I had to pick one just based on ownership, I would pick Colorado.
So the key to my sheets and projections is knowing when to ignore them. and when to listen to them. And one thing that's kind of neat is that, I've been doing these things for a couple of years now, and I rate these guys based on raw stacks and modified stacks and things like that. And I've learned, like, what a number looks like that rates like that much higher than everybody else. And sometimes, even though it's rated that much higher, I think I want to fade it anyway because the ownership. But I will just put it to you this way, based on, and listen, for those of you that want to see these things, this is for premium members only. But I honestly, even ownership aside, I just do not have St. Louis that much better than Seattle, if you want to know the truth.
Right.
So normally, in a situation like this, I would have St. Louis rated that much better than everybody, and then it's up to me whether I want to fade them or not. Listen, I have them the best, but it's really not by a lot. Even as far as his raw points, well, because the Angels have the guys that they have. I mean, right. The Angels, I have them rated just as high, if not higher, than St. Louis. And I think they're going to be probably pretty high owned also. So I have no interest in St. Louis if they're that chalky, if you want to know the truth. And listen, now you want to make the fundamental case for it. Okay, so the Cardinals are always are better against the against lefties anyway. So Mark, so you have Mark Hughes, who's a decent pitcher anyway. I really don't need it. And Colorado, they just actually don't even rate that high for me. So I'm not even going to get to that really. So I'm going to probably be off of this game, for better or worse. But this, I really feel as though this one I'm not even forcing. This, like the last every other course slate, we've talked about this. I'm just not playing them. I'm just not playing them. This time, I really don't think I'm playing them. You know what I mean? So that's my take. We'll see what I actually end up doing. But right now, I would probably end up with certainly less St. Louis than the field, and maybe not much of St. Louis at all.
Yeah, for you BVPers out there, you're going to see that Goldschmidt. I mean, he's 17 for 40 with 8 extra base hits, 3 stolen bases, 5 walks, and 40 at bats against basically average out to 20 something fantasy points a game. So just throwing that out there. And then Charlie Blackmon, not really extra base hit wise, but he's 10 for 18 off of Nats in his career. Just throwing that out there for people who are looking. But again, playing those guys as one-offs feels a little bit weird. Just throwing it out there just because it is Colorado, and those are the 2 best spots for in that game, in my opinion. All right, now you're going to get to Sheets. Is it possible that the Angels could be more popular?
No, but I think that Ohtani and that Trout could be extremely popular.
Yeah.
But as a full stack, I still think that people are going to go to St. Louis more, but maybe not by a lot. So going through it, it's hard not to like the Angels. I'm actually a little surprised, like you said, outside of Trout and Ohtani, that you're not seeing a ton of crazy ownership on them, which I don't know if I'm sure is going to be the case. No one's going to play Anthony Rendon at 3,900. No, they're going to play him.
All across the projections, all your guys' projections, he's no higher than 7% owned, which is kind of shocking, especially because he's really good against lefties. But it's Patrick Corbin. You should probably have exposure to this game in most every format. Ohtani and Trout, that's all well and good, but maybe one thing you could consider, maybe do a mini stack with Taylor Ward, Renfroe, and Rendon, and just skip Trout and Ohtani, and then build another stack to go with it.
I like the other dudes. I like the Drury also.
Sure. Yeah.
And Renfroe. I like all these guys.
All right. Well, they definitely are up there. I have them behind the other ones that I like because of the ownership, but I'm on board with the Angels. It's really hard not to want to pick on Patrick Corbin, just everything. It's also 67 degrees with the nicest game the Angels have had, at least in shows that I've done. And it's you gets a little bit of wind blowing out. But yeah, I think the Angels are well in play. And on the other side, should we be? I feel like Suarez is a better play than maybe. I don't know. Like I feel like he's a decent play. What are your thoughts on Suarez?
Yeah, so I have three leverage pitchers I have, and Suarez is one of them. So I like this. I, the fact is that he's got the. It's possible he's got the best matchup in baseball right now.
Yep.
You know, and also you're going to get kind of a high-owned elder at a similar price. So I definitely I find, and it's a 9:30 game, like buried in the back of the board, and everybody's going to be playing the Angels hitters. I mean, I like it. So that's and it's a guy I almost never play. But I think on this slate, I'm definitely interested. So by the way, I have the Angels as a good play, but I think they're going to be just too highly owned for me to make them a priority. I still like Seattle and Atlanta better, and even Texas. You know, that Texas KC game, but the Angels, they're going to rate pretty well. But I think Suarez is a decent bit of leverage here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's very reasonable. Hopefully he can get his 5 innings because he's probably getting the win.
Right.
But also, yeah, and then the guy in the next game we're about to talk about is going to be even more popular than the Elder, and that's Zach Gallen, who will be the most popular player on the slate, in my opinion. By the time it's all said and done, I think he'll be the highest owned. I do like him. I'm okay with attacking Milwaukee. It hasn't always worked out for me, but they will swing and miss and not walk enough. I'm okay with Gallen. You know, finished third in Cy Young voting last year. Anytime he's not facing the Dodgers, Rockies in Colorado or San Francisco, I like him a little better. Just I like them out of division. I think he can be hard for people to hit if you're not used to facing him. So I like Zach Gallen, and I actually think that you could I'm not going to do it, but I don't think that Wade Miley is a much worse play than any of these other guys we talked about. I do worry about his leash, but that's a super long shot play. Gallen is a priority. I don't have anything else in this game as a priority for myself.
Yeah. So to finish off, kind of like leverage discussion here, and the best plays discussion. We'll finish it off. But I have Gallen rated as the top overall pitcher, and I have him probably the highest owned pitcher. So again, you play him, but you don't play him with Coors. You don't play him with the Angels. I wouldn't at least, if you played him with Haney, maybe. But even still, I mean, he's going to be really. I mean, that price is just a little too juicy, you know.
Yeah, we were paying 9.7 for this guy.
So he's going to be really popular. So you got to be very careful about that. But I will tell you what I am interested in. My fourth bit of leverage as far as hitting goes is Arizona, and they've been putting up some freaking numbers this year. So I don't know about the Wade Miley, but I am
never gets hit.
Oh. Well,
no, I'm not kidding. He's like the most popular. Everybody likes to stack against him, and he just for so many years he just frustrates people. But that doesn't mean you can't play tonight. Sorry, go ahead, Chiefs.
Yeah, so that's where I am as far as that goes. Is I do. I mean, Arizona's been putting up some runs this year, and they rate okay for me, and low owned and all that stuff. So I like it. So Arizona is my fourth leverage alongside of Seattle, Atlanta, and Kansas City. Maybe we'll get something next game, not sure. And Zach Gallen is, quote unquote, I don't want to say the best play. I mean, it's the best value, but he's going to be the chalkiest. So you have to proceed accordingly.
Yeah. I certainly understand the Arizona bats because of the pricing and everything too. But I still think I might place them highly. All right. The last game of the night is not a very interesting from a DFS perspective for me. I have no problem, as I always say, that Urias is safer than everybody else every time he takes the mound because he just always gets there. But is it upside wise the right play? He's definitely on my list. I am open to him. I don't see him as being a priority against a Giants team like this. I also think that if it was any other matchup, I would actually consider using a little Logan Webb. It's just really hard to get there against the Dodgers, but I mean, he's better than a 7,400 pitcher. He just has a lot of tough matchups he's got to face. But I'm really not doing much in this game. 58 degrees, wind blowing out to center for what it's worth, but probably a game that I just avoid from DFS.
From the hitting side, I really don't have much of anything here. From the pitching side, I didn't get to Urias. I have him as really just kind of the lower of the tiers. and cover your ears. But I have Webb as my third leverage pitcher. Haney, along with Haney and Suarez. Now these aren't the best plays, right? But just like kind of like low owned shots here. I do have Webb. You know, he does obviously has some upside. He put up freaking 100 strikeouts against the Yankees for openers, and had some success against the Dodgers in the past. So just as something to do. That's the way it happens to rate for me. So that's pretty much what I got here.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clever actually. I think it makes plenty of sense. Definitely has talent to do it, so I can see it. So I've got the priorities for me, and good. You know, like when they're off the board a little bit, I guess. Seattle, Texas, the Angels, and the Atlanta lefties, and then of course maybe mixing in some cores, but I don't, as of right now, I'm not planning to. Scherzer, Gallen, Suarez, Urias, and Heaney as sort of my favorite pitchers when you factor in ownership and everything. But definitely you could include Castillo. And I'm open to the Elder thing. I just don't think I'm going to do it.
I'll just reiterate, and then I'll talk about FanDuel for a minute.
Yeah.
My quote unquote best plays, right, are Gallen and Elder, and then I guess Seattle, St. Louis, Angels, right, and Texas, Atlanta. But as far as leverage goes, I like Haney, Suarez, and Webb, and then I would throw in Kansas City and Arizona as other stacks. With respect to FanDuel, I'm just looking at my pictures here. Not much different. Gallen, Scherzer. I did that. Maybe I do this a little more than most people do. I did get a couple where you could pay down even for Elder and even Suarez. Suarez got to find 5 innings somehow, or 6 innings.
Right.
But
that's really true for Elder too. I mean, he pitched basically perfect in his last start, and he had 19 fantasy points. He had probably the best he can pitch.
Yeah.
And probably the max leash he'll get.
And I have no difference in the hitting, like Angels, Cardinals, Seattle, Colorado, Atlanta, Texas. I mean, literally nothing.
So I'm going to say my favorite FanDuel pitcher, and I don't even know if I'm going to use him, but I think it's clever. I know I like Seattle, but I have like 6,200 taking a shot with Smiley at 0 ownership. I'm completely open to.
I'm into that.
Even though I like Seattle, so that's just the way.
No, I have him as like 4th on FanDuel. You know, I like.
Yeah, I think he's very reasonable. And if he gets no ownership, I'll take a shot. And even though my main stack on DraftKings is Seattle, I think that like these range of outcome guys, you want to take chances on them earlier in the year when we don't have everybody throwing 110, 105 pitches every start.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that this is a spot where you could play Smiley at 6,200 if you want to get different. But Scherzer would be my number one.
Any good one-offs you want to talk about, or?
Yeah, so I think that, like, you know, look, and some of them are in the other games. I think that Seager is, until he's like 6K, I'll keep playing him. I just think that you're gonna see him hit more and more, and he just hasn't got the power going yet. Goldschmidt, I know it's in the Colorado game, he's popular, but I'm not gonna totally ignore those BVPs for my pitcher he used to face like every week. The lefties from Atlanta, Matt Olson especially, so that would be the other first baseman guy. I kind of like Nate Lowe, the other first baseman I like at a cheaper range. Cody Bellinger as a low-owned 2,900 play on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I've got you sort of still have the guys like TJ Friedel, Eddie Rosario, if you're making a mini Atlanta stack. Hunter Renfroe is a much better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. But if I ended up stacking anything, all I can say of the Colorado game, I do think you can get away if you did want to play St. Louis, you could stack the bottom of their order, and that would be, I think, different enough to, at least in 1,000-person or less tournaments, it would be different enough.
I'll throw in a couple of one-offs. DraftKings, the guy that you mentioned before, was Sam Haggerty from Seattle, second base and outfield. Obviously, you'd prefer him at second base at 2,300. From the Cardinals, if you wanted a one-off, somebody, you know, just to get a value piece, Alec Burleson, if he gets in, you want to make yourself different. You play him at first base instead of Goldschmidt.
Yeah,
that's something you could do. Then other guys we really talked about, like O'Neill. You mentioned Rosario, Ahmed for Arizona. He's really cheap. Montero, 3,100 for Colorado. He's really cheap. And I think we pretty much covered everybody else.
Yeah, and guys like Haggerty, I probably would be careful. Like if he's batting 8th or whatever, I don't know that I'd want to like try to play him.
I see a guy here that we didn't talk about who's really cheap. It's from the team that you mentioned. But yeah, Brad Miller is 2,200
Yeah,
for Texas, including your Texas stacks, maybe.
right. If he
plays, obviously.
Yeah, depends on where he hits it and if he plays and all that stuff. Texas is a little deeper this year. I actually like their team. I think they'll get better as the year goes on. All right, so it should be fun, guys. We're gonna be live at 6 Eastern, and it'll probably be just touching up all this stuff, and maybe I'll do a little more deep diving and we'll see if there's any weather changes or anything, but. Should be fun. Just baseball today, not multi-sporting, no basketball for at least the play-in games tomorrow, the first play-in games tomorrow.
So that's not today, those 2 games?
No.
Okay.
And then the next day will be the other ones. But we'll probably do something for that because those games actually matter and they'll be kind of fun to.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, by the way, for those of you, listen, I'm gonna be following what you guys want me to do. I will. If you guys want me to go over some hockey during the 6 o'clock thing, since we will have time, I'm more than happy to do that. And then here's an announcement. We have to see what the schedule looks like with respect to the live sweat stuff. So Tuesday, tomorrow night, I'm going to be out. So even if it was good slate tomorrow, I couldn't do. And kind of Thursdays would be sort of tricky for me also. So hopefully,
let's try. Let me try and see the NBA and MLB schedule for the
next up right now. Actually, we can do that.
Okay,
MLB because it wouldn't be in the
DK Live used to have it for like the draft
teams yet, right?
But no, they don't do it.
Let's just see. Let's see more today, tomorrow, Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. Well, I mean, there are games, but only
and that's what's going to be most Wednesdays, unfortunately, I think.
Right. So, and is it going to be the full 4-game slate Wednesday for basketball? Probably not yet, right? Okay.
There won't be any 4-gamers.
So I might do it Wednesday anyway, just for
100%.
But maybe not. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, yeah. So we'll play it by ear. Let us know what's good for you guys too, because it does feel like to try and do the full sweat show. It's nice to do before with the golf.
Yeah,
but it just is going to be too weird on Wednesdays with so many little nothing slates.
But I'll do it. I mean, even at 11 o'clock, if we want to just make it all about the golf, lineup build. I mean, then we could touch on whatever's going on. We'll just stay tuned for that. We'll let you guys know.
Okay.
I have Bruce tomorrow night, so I'm going to be out for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, enjoy that. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck, everybody, and we'll see you guys at 6 Eastern.
Okay.